Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. We got a new frame recently, and it's been a decent amount of time, so everybody's been able to play around with him, and I'm going to be talking about him a little bit in a more informative way. We're going to talk about his power points, like what strength numbers you need to hit for specific things, um, sort of like range targets. Uh, he is a very, very tanky frame. For those of you that have been playing a while, he has a build somewhat similar to Lavos for his tank ability. I'm pretty sure he has the highest armor value, base armor, in the game. Benefits greatly from the Umbral set, should you go that route. I did on one of my builds. But as this is a frame you can purchase, we will be doing a Nubro build. Zero-forma Nubro, where you just need a potato in them, which you can get from Nightwave for Nightwave credits or whatever it is. This guy deals mainly radiation, excels in survivability, especially at the star chart. Say 2 hours into a Steel Path mission, you can definitely build him up to the point where he can just face tank. And then if you decide to invest in him, 2-3 hours, whatever you choose to do, this could potentially be your guy. He has 4 abilities, as all frames should. Let's go over his abilities briefly. However the hell you pronounce this first one, Chirinka Pillar is what I'm going to go with. Little AoE, you drop down a pillar, provides a bit of CC if you can time it. If you've been doing the new missions, you can time this so it stops a mech from charging you. It's kind of hilarious. Deals radiation and an AoE, has decent duration. This is his only duration ability. You can have max of 2 pillars. The slow is 35%, and the empowered will come back to that. But when you cast his 2 or his 4, it causes the pulses to pulse faster, right? Passive's pretty straightforward, 3 punch through. And on things like on rifles, it's not that big of a deal because we have Prime Shred, but it's still obviously a welcome increase. On pistols, if you're running a pistol build with him, this is a big fucking deal because right now the only real punch through mod that's worth anything is also 15 capacity, which is Seeker. So on pistols, punch through is super expensive. And on arch guns, which is the weapon that he comes with, is what he's holding. What's the mod? Sabat rounds has decent punch through on it, but it is a decently rare drop, right? So it's something that's more of a late game player is going to have. So the fact that you have 3 punch through is definitely welcome, right? 2 is containment wall. This is his main source of CC. It is also a damage amp, damage vulnerability. Scales at quarter to your strength. So if you have 100 strength, you have 25. If you have 400 strength, you have 100% vulnerability. So it is a very weak vulnerability increase, but it actually ends up being a benefit for one of the builds I'm going to recommend for people with helmets. But deals a decent bit of damage for something that's CC. Base is 3,500. Damage per second, it does have a slight dot. It's not a big deal, but it is like a couple hundred. And is also kind of cheap. Like, this could be a potential shield gating skill if you do decide to go that route. It's 50 energy. 3 is very basic. It's status prevention, slight AoE. It's very weak, but it is radiation. As you kill enemies with radiation, you gain stacks. So it's basically a cast once and forget. The more I play him, I used to think this was, just because of how tanky he was, that this was a more core ability to him. And frankly, I think status prevention is criminally underrated. On, say, something like a slash proc, right? If you're running on this frame, because this frame has so much armor, if you get slash procced, your EHP nosedives. Where, say, something like an Anaros, right? Where it has like 10, 11k health, however you're building him. A slash proc isn't that big of a deal, even though you can get him up to a couple thousand armor. And my build that I'm running around with is running around at like 4,000 and change, and he's got like 3,800 health. A slash proc, a big enough one, will bypass that because it bypasses shields or bypasses armor. Sorry, not shields. Toxin bypasses shields. That status prevention forces the slash and toxin to go through your entire shield and health bar. So it is kind of a big deal where you're taking the damage, but you won't take the status, right? So it is a potentially significant EHP increase because you can't take those statuses. But you got to be dealing radiation, which is great because the new enemies are all weak to radiation, right? At least anyone that has a high health pool. The final one, which is a deceptively strong ass skill, but for 100 energy, you basically get a nuke in a single line. 100 energy, huge range for something this powerful. 40 meters, so you can clear out like a hall, basically, like a single line. Damage per second is huge, 10k base. We're running a little bit of power strength, so 13,000 has a explosion that scales with radiation stacks. And this is capable of triggering in an AoE. And it's going to be one of the tricks that we're going to use to multiply his damage. But the explosion radius is kind of small. It's 8 meters. But once you get it up around, say, like 12 to 14, the explosions start to overlap. And eventually, on a fairly weak strength build, you can get the explosions up to like a half mil. It's like 350, 500k, right? So definitely something worthwhile. Once you get the skill rotation down, this is a very intuitive rotation. Just due to the fact that disometric, however the hell you pronounce these, is a basically cast and forget, so you're really only casting 3 abilities. So basically it's 1 if you want it, but you're always going to use 2 and then 4. And that's going to be his main combo. It's just 2, 4, 2, 4. 1 is also a sort of like a prep. So let's go over his basic build, and I'll show the interaction with how 1 plays into it. It's pretty intuitive once you see it. It's not that big of a deal. All right, so new bro friendly, because you can purchase this frame, and it's not like a prime. So if you spend plat, you can get this guy. New bro friendly, zero-forma, only requires a potato. Basically, your goal at this point is to fucking stay alive, right? The aura forma is going to be whatever D polarity, that's its innate polarity. Whatever D polarity you can slot in there. Rejuvenation is good. I see. So for a lower level player, I would recommend rejuvenation if you can get it. Do not swipe for this. If I think the first aura that you can readily get is physique. If you got physique, go with that. Okay. So the main goal for lower level players or for new players is to just, not die in a mission, right? You're going to slowly build up EHP. He has a high health pool, so rejuvenation has a lot of work to do. 3 health per second. If you're almost dead at 1400, you got some work to do. So we've added as a couple of layers. We did redirection, even though this really isn't a shield frame. You can certainly utilize it. It's enough. And fast deflection is going to do a huge amount of weightlifting in terms of keeping you alive, but we will be slotting vitality and steel fiber. 1750 armor and 1400 health. If you bought this and you got the plat, say you got like a 75% off coupon, and you got this guy to start out with, the shields alone are going to be able to get you through the star chart. Unless it's, say, like a volatile Exodus, like one of the harder hitting abilities, even as weak as they are, you're just going to be able to basically walk through the star chart. Did streamline to make the abilities a little bit more efficient, cheaper to cast, and equilibrium so you can pick up health and energy orbs. And they'll control, like, this is the flawed version, which is what you're probably going to get. Even though it's flawed, it's still worthwhile to slot on, because most of the time, the average orb that you're going to be running into is going to be a health orb until you get to like higher level frames where you have more mods. Energy generation is going to be a big deal, but you're not going to have the ability to do anything about it. So if you're new to the game, well, first off, welcome to Warframe. Generating energy is going to be difficult. Equilibrium helps a lot with that, because so many enemies, almost all enemies have HP orbs as part of their drop table. So you're going to be able to pick up health orbs way more consistently than you will energy. This allows you to convert some of that into usable energy. So flow, you're going to get this kind of early. Intensify, you can get this super early, especially if you're doing rotation Cs on defenses and stuff like that. Which, to be honest, you're probably just burning through the star chart as fast as possible. But streamline to make it more economical. Fast deflection, you get this pretty early. This puts in a ton of work. Shield recharge as you're running from enemy group to enemy group. This takes seconds off your shield being fully recharged. Normally you have to wait a couple seconds. This knocks it down to like 1 or 2. I think it's like 2. If you're completely depleted, you can hide behind something. This will get you back up and running significantly faster. It literally takes seconds off of it. So just standard build. All right, no arcanes, anything like that. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're gonna go over to a. You've been playing a while, but this is more of a stubborn build, admittedly. Say you're like, hey, I like Corvex, but I don't want to put any forma into him. For whatever reason, like he's just like, oh, he's enjoyable. You're okay putting a catalyst in him. Potato him up because it's Nightwave. It doesn't cost you anything. But you're not sure you like the frame enough to put forma in him. You can run this build with some of the newer mods to test them out. So this is going to be like a player that's doing Whispers in the Wall. We are utilizing Precision Intensify because his main source of damage is going to be his 4. Everything else is just kind of, there to set up the 4. There is one downside to running the setup, even though it does have a higher DPS output on his 4. It does sacrifice something, but this is all health tank stuff, right? Health conversion doesn't show here. Offers a crap ton of armor. So this number, the armor value is going to be significantly higher. Grace. If you've been playing a while, you probably have a Grace. If you've been doing Steel Path regularly and you've been rolling arcanes, you probably have a Grace. Blessing is standing. Precision Intensifies, the newer mod. You get that from running vaults on the Whispers in the Wall tile set. Health conversion is from Samaras. Rage is a drop. Prime flow. You probably have this. Regular equilibrium. Transient fortitude just to up the strength a bit. This is conditional. You could actually run like a energy conversion if you're comfortable with that play style, but I was trying to keep it under the capacity cost. So that's the main reason why this is the rank that it is. And stretch makes the wall longer, provides more CC, a larger area of CC for the pillar. And obviously makes the beam go burr further away. 58 meters, that's pretty insane. And considering this is a health tank build, blessing, grace, adaptation, and health conversion, especially if you're using the Panzer, it's a lot of goddamn EHP. Let's be honest here. The flex slot for this, and again, going zero-forma, so we're slotting physique just to get our EHP up. But realistically, the aura slot, you can run anything you want. If you're running the Panzer still for whatever reason, or you're running, say, like a Nautilus, with any sort of like synth mod that drops health orbs when the Sentinel damages stuff. If you're doing like a gas cold build on the Verglass, you can get rid of flow and just use equilibrium. Just watch those on the, what's the mission with the shards? The Netracell missions. Just maybe be a little cognizant of the energy drain one. But if you got flow and you're running equilibrium, you got enough of a health pool to deal with it. But I've tried this on the Netracell mission. It does fine. Just watch the energy one if you take flow off. But anyway, this is more of a stubborn build. Remains zero-forma. And that's just kind of where this sits. Okay. Health tank, a little bit of range, a little bit of strength. When you hit the 4, it does a lot of damage. We're going to get it higher, though. But the downside of running Precision Intensify, and I'm not sure how much I like this mod yet. Obviously, this makes sense in capacity here, but Precision Intensify to me only makes sense when dealing with a strip, because his 2 has damage vulnerability on it. So you actually do want strength on here for this. But obviously, the plus 90 to Crucible Blast as 4 is obviously worthwhile, but play around with it if you want to use this, more power to you. But it is taking away from the vulnerability increase, so it is lowering the damage on your 4. But personally, I feel the plus 90 is worthwhile. But if you can afford to throw on, like a Blind Rage, especially if you don't want to use flow, and you're willing to put like a Streamline in, or you want to run like a super low duration and do Fleeting Expertise, to just use, because most of his abilities don't require duration, right? Like the 3 doesn't require duration, 2, the 4 doesn't. It's obviously going to completely cook your 1. But the fact is you can actually run a shit ton of strength on Corvex, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. This was at its complete and utter stubbornness. If you want to run Shieldgate, this is kind of the setup that you need. If you want to, and we'll do a little bit of math. Baby math, nothing serious. With a Streamline, it knocks the cost of his cheapest ability, down to 17.5. If you run Fleeting, then your mileage may vary. Max shields is 60. If I can click it, divided by 17.5. So in order to Shieldgate with just the 1, you would need 343 strength. So with this, you would have the option. I would Shieldgate with the 2. Or sorry, you would need 343 energy spent converted to shields. My bad. You wouldn't need 343 strength. So Brief Respite is 150. We're running 5 Augur mods to give us 200. 200 plus 150 is 350. So we're covered, right? With just the 1. Being able to Shieldgate. Misspoke, but if you're doing that, he's got kind of slow animations. Natural talent feels pretty good on him, but I'm pretty sure, man, because we just got that shard combining thing. I don't think I would recommend like a. I could see just like a regular yellow shard for casting speed being enough. And if you want to go, like, if you find this is a frame that you really, really enjoy, it might be worth justifying a single yellow, like a yellow towel. But he just doesn't need a lot in terms of casting speed. He feels pretty fluid. Um, and the casting speed, because he has iframes on the casting animation on his 4. Um, it's kind of a panic button. But like when you're casting, you get the shield gate. You're pretty safe in most of his abilities, especially with like CC. I guess if you're doing like a mission where there's like Eximus bonus, like obviously the like the Netracell missions can have a lot of Eximus in it, so maybe on something like that you would want higher cast speed. But like your average mission, especially with like gas electric, and like dots where you have like, you know, like electricity, toxin, those sorts of dots being able to burn down Overguard pretty quickly. I think it's just something where you can adapt in your play style to fix. I mean, it's part of the reason why I went with the tanky build, is to just be able to ignore this and just enjoy the game. Especially against like 300s, right? Like I've done Steel Path with him. He's perfectly fine. He's so tanky, it just kind of doesn't care, especially with like a triple Umbra Blessing Grace setup. Like it's brain dead. But if you want to force the shield gate, you can use this and do it with comfortably with his 1, and everything else costs more. And this still maintains what's most important about these builds, is they're all zero-forma. So there you go. All right, so let's go over my build, and I'll explain why I went with it. It's obviously higher investment, if I can type. So we're going from 0-forma to a 6-forma. This is over investment. Gauss Prime is the next Prime, and I'm not putting triple Umbra in him. So I've got, I've got Umbra Forma to spare, right? This is what I've been running with the current missions. He is so insanely tanky, it's overkill, but it still gives me 2 free spaces to change builds if I want. 177 strength, 145 range, no efficiency adjustment, no duration adjustment, grace and blessing, and with health conversion and adaptation, he is incredibly tanky. The philosophy's simple on this, especially with some of the missions now having like pretty severe punishments for dying, like the secret boss, right? Like the fragmented one, you can't res yourself. Well, if you die, you're dead, right? But the enemies are now regularly tanky enough. It is starting to become slightly difficult to res yourself, especially with the Overguard regenning enemies, where they cast Overguard onto other enemies. And because the tile sets are getting so big, enemies are scattered over more. It's not like running a defense mission where you can run around, and as long as you don't die at the end of the wave, you're going to have plenty of enemies to shoot. If you're running around and your only enemy is, the noodle guy, well, unless you have the amp and the setup to deal with him, with your amp, you're probably dead. So it's a byproduct of the enemies having huge health pools. Before, it used to be their defensive scaling was armor, and they mainly scaled through armor and for what their EHP is. So you would just take an arrow, strip their armor, and they blow up, right? Well, if the enemies all have insane amounts of EHP, and there's an enemy nearby that's giving them Overguard, you have to kill the enemy that's giving him overguard first. So it's becoming slightly more difficult. It's obviously not impossible. If you've got like a 777 or maybe like a 277, you can pop those guys pretty easy. But not everybody's set up like that. Like, it's something you gotta farm, right? So tankiness is something that gets punished in this. It feels like it's more of a punishment, especially because and the other thing that's part of the reason why I run this, there are, like, say the Whisper, I've noticed that like some of the nodes will disappear if you go down. It's happened like twice where I got killed by something and the node for where the card is, or for the arcane, when the Whisperer goes down, disappears. So there is sort of like stubbornness, just trying to get through the mission. And a lot of times if I'm taking like alliance mates through the Netracell mission, it's just easier if somebody's struggling to do the mission, for me to just take all 4 of the debuffs. Well, the punishment for that's pretty harsh, right? If you're taking all of the debuffs and the enemies are pretty tanky, like, it gets pretty difficult. So going down, it'll get patched, but this is just what I came up with, so I could just run around and shoot shit, right? But so let's talk about PowerPoints next. There are a couple of things, and I'm going to talk about ways to deal with it. The Helminth, after playing him maybe 50 hours, right? Because he only came out a couple days ago. The Helminth is pretty clearly 1 or 3. Okay? If you can put an ability on him, like say you want to do a 4 build. And this is where like Precision Intensify would come into play. So say you wanted to do a 4 build, if I can spell his name right. One of the good things about this is I think the go-to Helminth for him is going to be Pillage. And it's not because of survivability. I mean, obviously it's great getting your shields back. It's an easy shield gate, which is a massive plus. It's obviously, can help with statuses. But the biggest thing, I think, is that the armor strip, or the strip from Pillage, lines up with Containment Wall. So Corvex scales multiplicatively within his kit. He has a damage vulnerability, and he has an ability that needs a shit ton of strength. Not an insane amount, but like if you could fit 500 strength on him, he's just going to do significantly more damage than, say, a strip with like 300. And it's not going to be double, right? So the 4 scales 1-to-1 with your strength, pretty basic. But the multiplicative nature is that when you double the power strength, the damage goes up by 4. And that's kind of where he is. So you really, really want some strength on him. And I think Pillage is going to be the go-to. I'm not going to be running the setup, but we are in the age, let's be honest, we're in the age now of being able to semi-regularly hit 2,000 power strength on frames. When you consider like Nidus buffs and like Fisher buffs. Because there is just so much power in the game. The frames got multiplicatively stronger, considering the stuff that we have in the game now. Like even before the book, just the shards alone is a huge increase, and you have essentially universal faction damage on abilities. So the damage can get pretty nuts, especially if you're going to be running radiation shards on this guy. He can do millions of damage, because I'm going to show you basically with this, him getting to 350 to 500k on a build that has less than 200,000 or 200 strength on it. So he's going to get to a couple 100,000. Well, if you start running radiation shards on him, that's going to boost your damage even further, and you're going to go with an even stronger build. So Pillage, I think, is going to be the go-to because the utility of Pillage overlaps with Disometric Guard. I would recommend in this circumstance, if you're going to be doing this build, to run almost 400 power strength, get it to about 399, and then use Precision Intensify to boost your strength even further on your damage source. Reason being is a green shard is going to work wonders on him. When it's lower level enemies, you'll full strip, right? But as the enemy levels climb and the amount of armor that they have becomes more and more, you will stop full stripping. And you want, in order to maintain your radiation bonuses, you need the enemy to have armor, provided it's not the new enemies. So if you're going up against alloy armor, you want them to have the armor still. So a 99% strip, however close you can get it, with, say, like a green towel, will get you to an incredibly low armor value. Especially if you're using Pillage, you can really fine-tune what the strength is that you need. So you'll maintain the alloy armor, and say if you don't use corrosive projection and you're using shards to get more strength, a single green towel with a 99% strip on Pillage, so 399, 398, whatever works for you. For lower strength values, you can run corrosive projection. Obviously, adapt your strength accordingly. And then use Precision Intensify to further increase the damage on your nuke. And I think that's going to be the go-to spam all day build. I'm getting a little old for that play style, but in terms of damage, the thing that scales radiation as much as possible is armor strip, but keeping the armor. So you're going to want like a 99% strip from Pillage, a green towel to give you 3 stacks corrosive, and you're going to prime the enemy with as much viral and corrosive as you can shove down its throat. And then you're going to nuke with its 4. Is going to be the end goal. But you want it to keep the armor value, but you want it to have like 99.9% of its armor stripped. You want it to keep the armor because you're going to lose damage if it's just a health bag. Obviously, ignore this advice if you're going up against the new enemies. Then you probably don't need strip, and just build as much strength as possible. But for general star chart, if you're running like fissures, like we don't have fissures yet on the new missions, don't know if we will. If I tried to guess, it'd be all, me bullshitting, and I wouldn't know. But for regular star chart, say you're going up against the Grenier, Steel Path, you want the 99% strip with the 3, with the extra 3 stacks on corrosive, so you don't full strip, or you can push it as far away as possible. So once the enemies start getting strong, you maintain the alloy armor, you strip ferrite armor down as low as possible, and it's going to be the best way to increase your damage. So let's see how this behaves. We'll talk about his combo, talk about the utility of each weapon or each ability. The 1 is actually part of the rotation, but considering it's a kind of annoying setup, so this is a pretty sizable range. It is duration based, it lasts for a bit. How this is going to boost the damage on your 4th is this is actually going to bunch the enemies up. Pretty short and simple. Enemies come in, they get radiated, they can get confused, attack allies, but it slows them down. So if the enemy is going to walk toward you and the enemies enter a slow field, the enemies will start to bunch up as they enter into the range of the slow field. So when you come along and you condense them, these enemies here will be closer together. But And it is pretty enjoyable because you can smack shit around with it. But the general combo is with enough armor strip to keep their armor. You'll line them up and literally just blast them with your 4. And then hit them with a nucor. And it's a status nucor. There's no DPS really coming from it. And obviously it was having beam length issues. So pretty basic. About 15k on the explosion. Not a big deal. But it is a weaker build. And the main difference between this build and the other build that I'm going to show you is the vulnerability increase. It has the same AoE, about the same energy, equilibrium, adaptation, health conversion, are all on the other build. But just the difference in strength is going to amp the vulnerability enough that it's going to shoot the damage up. So that's sort of the philosophy. Range increases the AoE that's available to hit multiple enemies because they're all sort of bunched together in a line. And as they're running toward you, they're going to run into the slow field. So you're going to have sort of like an exclamation point. There's going to be bunches of them right at the bottom. And then there's going to be the line that hasn't hit the slow field yet. Is the general gist. So pretty similar build. We are using corrosive projection. That's going to be another form of armor strip, obviously. I hope. We will kill off the last couple of nerds, summon new ones. Wait for the doggo to get over here, or I guess Fox. Buddy, you missed. Alright, nice and spread. Bring them together. Prime, prime, prime. Get as many radiation procs as possible. So, it's a little bit better. You would want more range, and obviously you would want to stand further back. I am running sort of a shorter 2. Like here would be ideal. But I'm missing that guy because I hit him with the pole earlier. So with the new core, you want 10 stacks of corrosive and viral, ideally. Couple thousand. Nothing to write home about. But you want a ton of strength on him. And there's no reason not to run as much strength as possible. It increases the vulnerability, which also increases your damage output, but it also increases the strength of the output to begin with on your 4. So they scale together slowly, because the vulnerability is so weak. But if you incorporate something like a pillage, the damage gets significantly higher. Right? One of the other things that we need, and this is going to be talking about like combinations. I've been talking about the new core. We got our new handy dandy grimoire. One of the things that we can do to increase the damage output is this guy right here, Jahu Canicle. Killing enemies reduces the armor and shields of other enemies within affinity range by 5%. You are going to want to run corrosive on this. We're going to get viral from the Panzer. I would say to some extent, depending on how you're combining stuff, like with your total build, as long as you have viral somewhere on the build, and as long as you have corrosive, because you want to reduce the armor as much as possible. As long as you can get 10 viral stacks, that is a really good multiplicative damage increase. Obviously ignore the ribbon. It's just, there we go. So really, really basic and we're going to be utilizing the alt fire. Yeah, this one. Here we go. So it's a ton of fire rate on the pulses, 4 per second. The range obviously made a bit of a difference, but we're going to be modding for corrosive. But we're going to use Jahu Canicle, which reduces armor and shields, and Vom Invocation. And we're going to use the alt fire to increase our ability strength by a bit. Okay. So with this guy, if you don't know, you're a goddamn wizard. And this is going to be our final bit of scaling. So make sure it's stacked up. It is. Hopefully I can stand in the right spot. There we go. Cast your 2. Maybe do it again. I don't think we'll need it. And now, okay, we got up to 30. I must have screwed it up. Keep casting to get more armor stacks, or corrosive stacks, but you get the gist. As the enemies die off, it continues to shred armor. This can eventually overstrip, but it's a good midway point until you get a weapon that you like that has corrosive on it. And you can rely on the Panzer semi-regularly for viral stacks. Because let's be honest here. Look at me. Look at me. You're not using the fucking phage to prime shit. You're not going to use something that gives you corrosive viral radiation. You're not using the phage to strip. I mean, I can show that, but we'll look at this here. It's... I mean, people love the phage. I love the phage. If you know, you know. Here we go. Semi-even distribution. Air quotes. Radiation, viral, corrosive. Obviously prioritizing corrosive, but we also got viral and radiation on here. Shit ton of multi-shot. We're going for status proc by volume. Should you want to do this, it's stupid. As long as you don't go down to a single point, you should be fine. You want them separate so you get the individual procs. Otherwise, they'll combine as a beam and just sort of multiply their damage, but you'll get fewer procs. You want this. Nice little squiggly boy. So you can get as many procs as possible. Alright, so Bible. Cast the Holy Spirit. Prime. Yep. A little bit better. I need to aim better with the 2, but you get the gist. Radiation procs make the explosions happen faster. The Bible, for what it's worth, provides a little bit of strip, but you got to do damage to enemies. The projectile is super slow. That's part of the reason why the enemies at the end of the line didn't die, is because the strip from the Bible, the Grimoire, wasn't really able to get that far because the projectile doesn't move fast at all. But this is sort of the philosophy. Get as much strip as you can. You want a super low armor value. And again, these are enemies that are ferrite. Oh, let me show you alloy, since we're sitting here talking about it. Let's go with a viral new core, actually. And we'll see more realistic for current content, because you're probably going to be using this guy against the Murmur. I know I am. Let's see, corrosive viral. Right here. So this is going to be something a little bit more realistic. Normally I would run corrosive, because I'm dealing a heat, mostly a heat dot, got a damage crit chance. Heat Riven, not great, good. Primed Heater Charge, so it's a bit more of a DPS setup. This is what I've been using in the missions. And Encumber to get additional stats. New enemies, please. Something with some tank. Alright, let's try these guys. The Hollow Veins don't like moving. More or less. Yeah, they're complaining. Alright, so the viral new core, prime. And then hit them. So 200k, get out of the explosion so you don't die. I saw 200k. That's more realistic damage. Obviously, them having no armor, being complete bags of, you know, health, and being weak to radiation incredibly amps the damage that you do. So it's pretty easy to get up to like 200k. And again, that was 200k with 177 power strength, right? If you want to run against the Murmur, and you don't care about status prevention, I get it. Shit ton of power strength. Maybe even Roar on 3 or the 1. Actually, probably running it on the 1 if you're just trying to run and gun. Duration ability isn't going to hurt you. But that way you can just jump in, cast the 1 or cast Roar every now and then. And it's not going to kill you, you know, energy consumption wise, because it's a duration ability. And it'll increase how much damage your 2 does. That's whatever. But it'll do a bit of damage from the 4. So, because it's an ability boost. And run just as much power strength as you can with efficiency. And you can completely dump stat duration on that. And even then, you're not going to need a lot of strength or a lot of range. Like there's literally no point in running like 280 range on this frame, unless you're specifically using like a massively open, like in an open world. Like if you want to be running around in Orb Valis, line everything up across the map, and then zap them with your 4. Run 280 range on it. Like, I just can't see you needing to be able to hit something from, like, 120 meters away. But, you know, if that's how you roll, I'm not going to judge. Run that range if it's how you play. But, yeah, I mean, you can do it, what? At least 100, right? Anyway. Those are the builds that I came up with. If you decide to use Pillage, that's my thinking, is that because it scales. With the 2, it gives you the highest amount of damage that you can do with the most fine-tunable strip. Even though, because like there is a lot of strength, right? But the difference is it provides utility. You got the status cleanse, right? Or the overguard, and you got the armor and shield strip. It's a defense strip. It provides the most utility. And it helps you by regenerating your shields, right? Based on how much you strip. But, I mean, if you're doing, like, a level cap or something like that, like, it's basically you're regenning everything for shields. You would be able to run the highest amount of power strength and not be hampered by overstripping. But if you're against the Murmur, listen, you do you, fam. Get 1,000 power strength on this thing. Because you can further increase the ability damage, right, with the new shards. which is an entire other thing. But eventually I'll do the shard video, but I've been working on standing. So it's going to be a while until I do that, because I haven't bought the segment yet. But pillage might be the way. It allows the highest ceiling for strip. That's my final message. Questions, comments, concern, leave a comment. Anyway, thank you guys. I hope this helped. Gives you some PowerPoint, some thinking of what I've been thinking about with the frame. This frame isn't rocket science. He's tanky, similar to Lavos. You can get a ton of EHP on him. And to be honest, it's fun running around with like 10 stacks of adaptation, and like 3,000 whatever armor, and like 3,000 health. Like, that is an incredibly upfront, though admittedly power crept EHP. Like, that is a lot of EHP. Like, an Aros needs to be worried level. But it is what it is. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope this helped. Have a blessed day. Thank you for watching the video. Have a good day, guys.